And you know what it is. That's the music I'm talking about. I thought he was going to drop Chelsea Dagger on us for a second there. Has someone lied to you? Has someone misled you? Has someone told you a half-truth, a complete falsehood, or engaged in an act of verbal hypocrisy? If so, now is your chance to expose that person. 312-644-6767. It is time, finally, for...
Who you crappin'?
On WSCR, The Score.
And it is indeed time for Who Ya Crappin' on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. It's all up to you, but me, I love to keep it simple. Limit this to something someone said, not something someone did.
And we will start with Gary in Evanston on Who Ya Crappin' on The Score. Gary!
Hi, Terry and Dan. Terry, time flies because 11 years ago this month I called you and Mac and said that the three greatest Americans of the 20th century were Charles Barkley, Frank Sinatra, and Dan Blocker. And I still stand by that statement.
While you're at it, Tiger Woods, too.
But a statement that I do disagree with is Michael Wilbon's repeated assertion on PTI last week that Vinny Del Negro was, quote, a good coach who should not be fired. I like Wilbon, but he probably did not pay enough attention to his hometown Bulls during the past two seasons, because if he had, then he never would have said even once that Vinny is a good coach, let alone repeating that opinion over and over again. Michael Wilbon, who are you crapping?
This from Ron Santos' Band-Aid mustache. This goes out to Lou Pinella. Lou lambasted a reporter for having the nerve and the gall to suggest bunting over Marlon Byrd down one run with the lefty Fontenot up versus the righty Tyler Clippard. While I'd argue statistically that it probably does make more sense to let little Babe Ruth swing away, he asks, what kind of baseball are you playing? Well, Lou, how about your kind of baseball? Lou made these calls. July 9th, 2000, Dodgers and Mariners, bottom of the fifth, up 2-0, no outs. Joe Oliver on second, lefty Mark McLemore versus righty Chan-Ho Park, and he bunts him over to third. Well, I guess they were up in that game, but August 23rd, 2005, Indians at Rays, bottom of the first, tied 0-0, no outs. Julio Lugo on second, lefty Carl Crawford versus righty Jake Westbrook, and he bunts him over to third.
Wow.
Well, they were tied.
Wow.
And it was early. But July 27th, 2000, Blue Jays at Mariners, bottom of the fifth, down 1-0. No outs, and Dan Wilson on second. Lefty Mark McLemore versus the righty Esteban Loaiza, and he bunts him over to third.
Wow.
Lou, it's obvious you shouldn't have blown up over that question, but it's especially bad when you yourself have demonstrated that the bunt in this situation is not only acceptable, but you have employed it before. Who you crappin'?
Well, we thought so at the time. Thank you there for that. It's very well researched, and thank you for making me feel like less of a baseball imbecile, if that's possible.
And this is from the Sultan of Guilt, who says, Phil Rogers, in today's installment of Your Morning Phil, he addresses Arizona's new law targeting immigrants, although he points out that some groups, including the Players Union, have denounced the law. Rogers does not hide his own thoughts, asking, is this law really as radical as it's being portrayed? He then refers his readers to what he calls a very interesting column by David Whitley, who mocks those who've compared the new law to apartheid or Jim Crow, saying Arizona's new law is none of those things. Actually, it harkens back to 1940 when Congress passed the Alien Registration Act. The problem is that bill, also known as the Smith Act of 1940, had little to do with immigration. It was most notable for allowing anyone, including American citizens, to be imprisoned for their political beliefs. And that was the thin legal reed on which Joe McCarthy based his 1950s witch hunts. It's also considered to be one of the most egregious attacks on the First Amendment, something you'd think would be of concern to people like Rogers who work in a field such as journalism. But Whitley, and I assume Rogers, believe the new law is okay because it harkens back to the time when the feds were able to go after hardened criminals like Burgess Meredith and Zero Mostel. Hey, Phil, crazy Colonel McCormick is long gone. He doesn't run the Trib anymore, so go back to telling us why the Sox need a new young catcher. Phil Rogers, who you crapping? Unemployed lawyer in Lakeview, you're on the score.
Hey, guys. Elizabeth Hasselbeck thinks Aaron Andrews has been wearing too little on Dancing with the Stars. On Tuesday's The View, referring to the man who shot the notorious Peephole video, Hasselbeck said, quote, in some way, if I'm him, I'm like, man, I just could have waited 12 weeks and seen this a little bit less without prison time.
Oh, man.
Yesterday, Hasselbeck tearfully apologized on air, saying, in part, quote, I was focused on the detestable criminal who's behind bars. No, Elizabeth, you weren't focused on the criminal. You were focused on Andrews. You just used the criminal's imaginary point of view to blame the victim. It's true Andrews was wearing revealing outfits on the dancing show, but he does this by choice. Are you really incapable of seeing the difference between that and being secretly videotaped nude? After all, you yourself appeared in a bikini on reality TV when you were a contestant on Survivor. A BS apology is bad enough, but one given through tears is especially disgusting. Elizabeth Hasselbeck, who you crappin'?
Nice.
Well, very nice, and they all wear those things. If you can't single her out.
Ballroom dancers wear skimpy clothes.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Your ass is half out or your front. It's just what they do. It's not just her. I mean, I thank you for the call. I didn't know anything about that. I knew nothing about that, but I can promise you, believe me, I've watched Dancing with the Stars. Hello, and I promise you, whether you look good, whether you look bad, whether you want to see more, whether you want to see less, you see it.
And many of those ballroom dancing events involve boobies accidentally flopping
Yes.
out and things appearing that aren't supposed to appear because of just how tight and revealing the outfits are.
Yes, of course. They're
This is from Schmutzy. It says, after being benched by Don Wakamatsu in the 7th inning, Milton Bradley decided to leave the premises entirely. He changed his clothes. He strolled out of Safeco Fields clubhouse while his teammates were still playing the Rays. Late last night, the news broke that Milton had contacted the Mariners front office and asked for some help dealing with what Seattle GM Jack Zurensek called some very personal and very emotional things in his life right now. Last June, Milton Bradley threw a fit in the Cubs dugout and had words with Lou Pinella in the tunnel after being benched late in a game against the Sox. I guess Milton was just dealing with personal, emotional things in his life last year, too. Same for that time he said the Chicago Cub fans are racists. Personal, emotional stuff that he was dealing with. In fact, the personal, emotional stuff is probably what has caused him to play for 8 teams in 11 years. So when Milton left Chicago this past offseason and said, it's not me that's the problem, it's Chicago, he probably knew in his heart of hearts that he indeed is the problem, and that he's been the problem all along. So, Milton Bradley, let me be the first to tell you it's not us, it's you, and ask you who you crappin'.
very nice. Very nice.
In Algonquin, it's Gouvernement Fromage on the score.
Gentlemen, to be fair, I didn't even notice Aaron Andrews was half naked on that show. I've been staring at the men all this time. This week's Fiesta Poo-Poo goes to NHL referee Mark Watson, who, while working the Game 7 between the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals, waved off a goal by Les Habitants. After reviewing the play, the Saskatchewan native addressed the crowd over the PA and said, "No goal. The player interfered with the goalie. No penalty to the offensive player." What? You just told a packed house of Capitals fans that their goalie was interfered with. You saw it, and you still weren't going to call a penalty. Talk about giving the home team's fans a big F-U. Brad Watson, 2 things. Saying the player's stick was too high is the same as high sticking. And ooh, et vous crappin'.
Thank you, Fromage. Merci beaucoup. Insurance Guy says, this goes out to Steve Conroyd, who said when discussing Big Buff's ability to get in the heads of Canuck fans, quote, Canuck fans have never seen a black player do so well against them, and the reason why they booed so hard and were so focused on Buff was the pure shock of a black player succeeding on their ice. They knew the players were getting beat, and they themselves felt defeated. It is not a common occurrence for them to witness a dominant performance by a black player in Vancouver. Never mind the fact that Conroyd should know Canadian hockey history since he was, in fact, a Canadian-born former NHLer. But to his point that the Vancouver fans are unfamiliar with a black player having success on their ice, unlike your hometown of Hinsdale, Steve, Canada's filled with talented black hockey players who are born and raised with sticks in their hands. No fan of hockey in Canada is shocked by the success of a black player. Furthermore, the Canucks play against a very talented player in their own division who's black. They play him 6 times a season. This player also plays on a team from Canada. This unknown black player was born in Edmonton, Alberta. The unknown black player is a captain of his Canadian NHL team, the Calgary Flames. This freak of nature, who nobody in Vancouver has ever seen, also played on the Canadian Olympic team. Yes, Steve, let me introduce you to Jerome Iginla of the Calgary Flames. Yes, the Flames, the same team that drafted you when you played. Vancouver fans booed, and they were frustrated with Buff because he scored a hat trick, because he owned the ice. Steve Conroyd, who you crapping?
Oh,
These are good today.
That's
these are really, really good today, and we do have an open line. If you want to jump in, you'll get on. If you're not a retard, 312-644-6767 in Bolingbrook. Blind chauffeur is on the score.
Oh, too late for that. He's here.
Right, he made it.
Too late.
He broke through.
I know. Hey, Dan, maybe Beth will help you demonstrate the long stroke. But that's later.
Don't bet on it.
This crap goes out to Dr. George A. Riekers. As recent as 2004, in an Arkansas case involving gay adoption rights, Dr. George said, quote, "The Bible is the infallible word of God and homosexuality is a sin." Doctor, getting a rent boy as your luggage carrier is not jiving with me, especially when you look at rentboy.com's front page. Doctor, couple things. Remind yourself of Romans 3:23, and then just come out and say that you're gay. Also, who are you crapping?
That's what we're doing. Who are you crapping? Still plenty of time for you. Yub on in 312-644-6767. Come on in. Join the party. You've got Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. And we are in the midst of Who Ya Crappin' here on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. You've been on point so far. 312-644-6767.
And next up is Roger in his car on The Score.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This crap goes out to Mr. Dan Bernstein.
Hello.
Yesterday, during one of the updates, it was reported that amongst the best-selling jerseys of NFL rookies, the number one slot goes to Tim Tebow, to which Dan responded, "This just proves you don't have to be good, you just have to be famous." I don't get it, Dan. For what is Tim Tebow famous? Is he on the cast of the Jersey Shore? Is he a finalist on American Idol? No. The reason that he's famous is because during his college football career, Mr. Tebow won a Heisman Trophy, which goes to the nation's supposedly best player. He led the Gators to a championship, and he broke several SEC records. I would think that you had to at least be good in order to accomplish those facts. Now, Dan, you have every right to dislike the guy, pro-life evangelical who makes goofy commercials with his mom, but that shouldn't so cloud your judgment that you can't realize that during his college career, Tim Tebow was at least good, and at times, very good. So, Dan, even if you don't question why you don't like Tim Tebow, please ask yourself this. Dan Bernstein, who you crapping?
Thanks, Roger. This is from Stonecutter, who says this goes out to the sports cliche Tourette's-afflicted Chris Cook. In Monday night's wrap of the Blackhawks 4-2 win over the Canucks, Cook wrote the following. Mason Raymond and Mikael Samuelsson scored in the first 5:02 for Vancouver to stun the crowd of 22,142. But the Hawks' comeback turned jeers into cheers and gave them momentum heading into Game 3. Then Tuesday afternoon, another Cook story was posted to the Tribune's website titled, "Hawks Hope to Build on Momentum of Game 2 Victory," in which he wrote, "The Hawks should have some momentum as they prepare to play before a hostile crowd." I really have no interest in pointing out how utterly wrong the idea of game-to-game momentum is to Chris Cook, and fortunately, I don't have to. Around 7:30 on Tuesday morning, after writing his game wrap, but before writing his Tuesday column, Cook was on with Mully and Hanley. Not 90 seconds into the interview, he said, "As we've seen throughout these postseason games, momentum really doesn't matter much." But which is it? Either he changed his mind twice in the span of less than 24 hours, or he has no idea what he's writing.
Uh-oh.
In any case, a statement and a question. Hey, Chris Cook, pick a lane, and who you crapping?
Uh-oh.
I think I'm in trouble on that one.
Uh-oh.
Hey. And this is from Broad Brad Asmus. Long time no hear from.
Yeah, it's our guy.
Goes out to Illinois lawmaker Martin Sandoval, who called for the White Sox to pull their spring training out of Arizona in the wake of the immigration law. Sandoval's reason was, a majority of the White Sox players are Latin. I thought, how would they feel as they traveled to Arizona? A majority? Really? Quick glance at the 25-man roster shows that 6 players were born outside the U.S. Ramirez, Pena, Vizquel, Garcia, Castro, and Jones. Alex Rios hails from Alabama. Quentin and Santos from California. For argument's sake, let's just throw in Juan Pierre, who, like Rios, is from Alabama. That pushes the total to 10. Still not half the 25-man roster. Mr. Sandoval, the point of this is not to debate the civil rights or law of Arizona's stance on immigration, but rather to highlight the fact your first argument for the Sox to leave their spring training home is based on a complete inaccuracy. When you can count the foreign-born players on Antonio Alfonseca's right hand, that does not constitute a majority. There are reasons to be on either side of this issue, but when you grossly misinterpret concrete numbers due to sheer laziness, you do yourself and your constituents a huge disservice. So, Martin Sandoval, who you crappin'?
We're pretty familiar with that.
By the way, Pac-Man Jones just signed a 2-year deal with the Bengals.
Uh-oh.
Why uh-oh?
I don't know.
Yeah, Cincinnati and the history they've had.
Yeah, I mean, so you remember they thought, well, we're cleaning this up.
As long as he's not on the Chris Henry turn your life around plan.
Right.
Because that didn't go well.
No, he left that behind.
It's
there for you.
He turned his life around, though.
Oh, sure.
Joe from Mokina says Gale Sayers was asked about how his playing style compares to Reggie Bush. And Gale said, you can't compare that because he gets hurt too much. Gale, you had 3.5 healthy years of play as your right knee was torn to shreds. In 1970, just 5 years after you signed with the Bears as a rookie, you had a second knee surgery. That injury cost you much of your famous speed and directly led to your retirement after 5 seasons. Enjoy the spotlight. But who you crapping? All right, am I checking the manometer? I am. You're giving me the wrap-up? Okay. I will...
We'll do what we say.
We'll wrap it up. We'll check the manometer.
And, it's ready, 2 weeks. It's damn ready to burst, and I think you'll be okay here.
I think because of all the hockey that's going on, you got it in Manitoba.
That's where I went.
I knew it.
Yeah, I'm hockey intensive.
Well, the swindler in Barrington will bear the pressure to close out Who You Crappin' on the score. Swindler.
I don't want to close it out. But
anyway,
close
it out. Come on.
This crap goes out to you, Bernstein. On Tuesday, you're dealing with some nincompoop on the phone about coaches are judged by their championships, and you can't be considered a great coach unless if you win a championship. Well, about an hour and a half later, the subject comes up with Jerry Sloan. Right out of Mr. Danny Boy's mouth, Jerry's not a good coach. He's a great coach. How many championships Mr. Sloan have? Dan Bernstein, who you crappin'?
Hey,
you
buddy.
make us wonder with the things you say. Maybe you were
Hey, buddy.
You must have thought that we were napping.
Hey, buddy.
Who you crappin'?
Thank you, one and all.